In the early morning hours of April 7, 1945, over the smoke-choked skies of Tokyo, Japanese fighter pilots scrambled to intercept a wave of American B-29 bombers, expecting to find them completely defenseless. Instead, as they closed in for the kill, a swarm of sleek, silver P-51 Mustangs swept down out of the sun at over 400 miles per hour, completely catching the defenders off guard. In less than 45 minutes, American pilots tore through the Japanese interception force, shooting down 21 enemy aircraft while losing just 2 of their own. It was a staggering display of aerial dominance, a single battle that proved the United States Air Force could now strike the imperial capital at will, escort heavy bombers across 1,500 miles of open ocean, and rule the skies directly over the Japanese homeland. That single morning shattered Japan's remaining air defense strategy. Before the Mustangs arrived at Iwo Jima, B-29 superfortresses had to fly 3,000-mile round trips from the Mariana Islands without a single fighter escort. Japanese interceptors like the Ki-84 Hay-8 and the Kawasaki Tony attacked the heavy bomber formations with near impunity, taking a steady, agonizing toll on American air crews. But the capture of Iwo Jima changed the geometry of the Pacific War overnight, placing single-engine American fighters just 650 nautical miles from Tokyo. When the 7-fighter command proved on April 7 that it could protect the bomber fleet, Japanese command was forced to make a desperate choice: stop risking their dwindling planes against American Mustangs, or watch their remaining air force be systematically wiped out. Within weeks, Japanese fighter interception virtually ceased whenever the Mustangs appeared, forcing the Americans to take an even more aggressive stance. With fewer enemy planes taking to the air, P-51 pilots dropped down from 20,000 feet to treetop level, launching relentless low-altitude sweeps across the Tokyo plain. Armed with 650 caliber machine guns and high-velocity rockets, the Mustangs hunted down steam locomotives, strafed hidden airfields, destroyed coastal shipping, and blasted military rail depots. By the summer of 1945, American air superiority was absolute, stripping the Japanese military of its defenses and proving that even across thousands of miles of ocean, the United States possessed the engineering, the logistics, and the pilot's skill to control the sky. To understand how American forces achieved this total dominance, one must look back to the desperate strategic crisis of late 1944. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress was the most expensive and technologically advanced weapons system developed by the United States during World War II, costing $3 billion, far more than even the Manhattan Project. Operating from massive newly constructed airfields on Saipan, Tinian, and Guam in the Mariana Islands, these heavy bombers were tasked with destroying Japan's industrial infrastructure. However, the distance from the Marianas to Tokyo was an astounding 1,500 miles each way. While the B-29 could carry heavy bomb loads across those immense ocean expanses, single-engine fighter aircraft were bound by physical fuel limitations. No American fighter in existence could fly 3,000 miles on a single mission. As a result, B-29 formations were forced to penetrate deep into Japanese territory alone. High above Tokyo and Nagoya, Japanese interceptors swarmed the unescorted bomber streams. The B-29 suffered heavy operational losses, not only from concentrated enemy air attacks, but also from battle damage and engine failures that left crippled bombers with no place to land in the vast, empty stretches of the Pacific Ocean. American military planners knew that winning the air war required a stepping stone, a midway base close enough to Japan to allow fighters to escort the bombers, and to serve as an emergency landing strip for damaged B-29s. That stepping stone was Iwo Jima, a tiny, 8-square-mile island of black volcanic ash located 650 nautical miles south of Tokyo. On February 19, 1945, the United States Marine Corps launched Operation Detachment. Over 70,000 Marines assaulted the heavily fortified island, engaging 20,000 deeply entrenched Japanese soldiers in 36 days of brutal, unrelenting combat. The cost was harrowing. Nearly 6,800 Marines gave their lives, and over 18,000 were wounded. But by late March 1945, the island was secured, and Army engineers worked around the clock to transform its volcanic ash into operational airfields. While Marines were clearing the last underground bunkers on Iwo Jima, aviation engineers back in the United States were faced with a staggering technical problem. Standard P-51 Mustangs were built for European combat ranges and could not survive the 650-mile overwater flight to Tokyo and back. By early April 1945, 3 elite fighter groups, the 15th, 21st, and 506th Fighter Groups under 7 Fighter Command, were staged on Iwo Jima's south and central fields. On April 7, the command launched its historic first strike. When 119 Mustangs lifted off into the morning sky to meet the B-29s over Musashino, they didn't just protect the bombers, they established absolute dominance. Major James B. Tapp of the 15th Fighter Group shot down 3 Japanese fighters during that single mission, embarking on his path to become the Pacific War's first very long-range ace. The massive discrepancy in losses, 21 Japanese aircraft destroyed against only 2 American Mustangs lost, sent shockwaves through the Japanese High Command. Following the April 7 victory, the Mustangs flew escort mission after escort mission throughout April and May, relentlessly sweeping Japanese fighters from the sky over Tokyo, Nagoya, and Osaka. Realizing their aircraft were outmatched in technical performance and their replacement pilots lacked the training of early war veterans, the Japanese military altered its strategy. Enemy air commanders ordered their remaining fighter units to stand down, hiding their aircraft in camouflaged earthen revetments and subterranean hangars near airfields. The Japanese plan was to conserve their remaining aviation strength and fuel reserves for one final, desperate resistance against the anticipated Allied amphibious invasion of the home islands. Recognizing that Japanese planes were refusing to take to the air to engage the bomber formations, American commanders adapted their strategy once again. Beginning in mid-May 1945, 7 Fighter Command ordered its Mustang squadrons to shift from high-altitude bomber escort to low-level ground attack sweeps. P-51s descended from 20,000 feet to treetop level, streaking across Japanese airfields, naval bases, and industrial transport lines. Armed with their 650 caliber machine guns and retrofitted with underwing rocket launchers firing 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets, the Mustangs destroyed hundreds of parked enemy aircraft on the ground. These low-level strafing missions were extraordinarily hazardous. American pilots flew into dense, concentrated light anti-aircraft fire from concealed ground batteries. Flying at speeds exceeding 400 miles per hour mere feet above the terrain, a single hit to the liquid-cooled Merlin engine would cause immediate engine seizure, leaving the pilot with virtually no altitude to bail out. Despite the fierce ground fire, American aviators systematically dismantled Japan's domestic transportation network, destroying hundreds of military steam locomotives, shattering coastal supply barges, and severing telegraph lines across the Tokyo plain. Yet, as American airmen dominated both the skies and the ground, they faced an enemy far more dangerous and unpredictable than enemy anti-aircraft fire, the violent, unstable weather of the western Pacific Ocean. On June 1, 1945, a strike force of 148 P-51 Mustangs took off from Iwo Jima to escort a major B-29 raid against the city of Osaka. Midway through the flight, the formation flew directly into an unpredicted, massive tropical weather front, a towering, impenetrable wall of thunderhead cumulonimbus clouds extending from sea level up to 23,000 feet. Plunged instantly into pitch-black clouds with zero visibility, the single-engine fighters encountered terrifying turbulence. Violent updrafts and downdrafts threw 4-ton Mustangs around like paper in a storm. Instrument panels shook violently, causing pilots to lose all spatial orientation. Aircraft were flipped upside down, wings were sheared off by excessive gravitational forces, and disoriented pilots accidentally slammed into each other inside the dense clouds. In what became grimly known as Black Friday, 27 P-51 Mustangs were lost and 24 American pilots were killed in a single afternoon, without a single Japanese fighter or ground gun firing a shot. It remains the single worst day of non-combat losses in the history of 7 Fighter Command. To protect pilots against the terrifying reality of engine failure or weather emergencies over the ocean, the U.S. military engineered the most sophisticated air-sea rescue network ever created. Stationed at designated 100-mile intervals along the entire 650-mile flight path between Iwo Jima and Tokyo were American Navy submarines, armed destroyers, and specialized Super Dumbo B-29 bombers carrying wooden lifeboats under their fuselages that could be dropped by parachute. If a Mustang pilot was forced to ditch his plane in the ocean, radio distress signals were picked up instantly, and rescue submarines or amphibious Catalina flying boats were dispatched to retrieve the downed aviator. This lifeline saved dozens of American pilots who would have otherwise been lost to the vast ocean. By July 1945, the air war over Japan was effectively over. American air dominance was absolute. The Mustangs ruled the skies from northern Honshu down to Kyushu, flying unchallenged over Mount Fuji and the imperial capital. Japanese air defenses had been completely crushed. Between April 7 and mid-August 1945, the Mustangs of 7 Fighter Command completed 51 very long-range combat operations. They had destroyed over 300 enemy aircraft in the air and on the ground, disrupted military communications, protected the strategic bomber fleet, and eliminated Imperial Japan's ability to defend its own territorial airspace. On August 14, 1945, President Harry S. Truman announced Japan's unconditional surrender following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the Soviet entry into the Pacific War. 2 weeks later, on August 31, 1945, 7 Fighter Command executed its 51st and final VLR mission from Iwo Jima, a massive, ceremonial flyover above Tokyo Bay. Dozens of silver P-51 Mustangs roared in tight, flawless formations over the battle cruisers and battleships anchored below, including the USS Missouri. It was a fitting climax to an incredible campaign. What had begun as an almost impossible engineering and human challenge, flying single-engine fighters across 1,500 miles of open ocean, ended in total military victory. Through unprecedented technical innovation, logistical power, and the sheer courage of the young men in the cockpit, the P-51 Mustang had not only escorted the bombers that brought the war to an end, but had established an era of complete and unquestioned American air dominance over the Pacific.